Welcome to Board of It. I'm Farrell, this is Tally.
Hello.
And this will be our preview of Chaos Cove, which was provided to us by 8 Games. This is a preview and this game will be on GameFound, or is on GameFound, depending when you're watching it. And in Chaos Cove, this is for 2 to 4 players. And essentially, Chaos Cove is famous for the quality of its rum, but unfortunately, lots of people have heard about the rum and they want your rum.
Makes sense.
So what's happening in the game, Tally?
So this is a worker placement game as the kind of primary mechanic. But what's interesting is it's semi-cooperative, because if the barbarians and the pirates manage to take over the island, then everyone loses, although you are ultimately out for yourself.
Yes, because whoever the biggest hero is, who defeated the most pirates and barbarians, is generally going to be crowned the best person on Chaos Cove.
Absolutely, as they deserve to be.
And they get their pick of the rum,
yes.
I would hope. As we alluded to in the intro, at the core it's a worker placement game, although it is kind of a little more than that. Your basic turn will be putting one of your heroes onto the board. So there are 16 heroes and they all have a unique power. You will have 4 heroes in front of you, and every round, of which there's 4 in the game, you'll shift them round and you'll get 4 new ones till you've had all of the heroes in the game. But on your average turn, you'll put one on one of the locations on the board, of which there's 12, and they have little actions they do. And when you put them down, you will do that hero's power. You will get 2 resources from the location, and the resources change depending which location you go to, and you will do the action of that location, which also is obviously different at each location. The other thing you could do is, if there is a matching hero on the board, you can play that hero's cards. And the hero cards basically give you or let you do the power of that hero. And you have 4, but only the first 2 heroes you put on the board are free, and then you start having to pay 3 coins. So if you want to play all of them, you do have to think ahead and get the most out of that round. And essentially what you're trying to do by going to these spaces is collect goods and prepare yourself for combat with the pirates and the barbarians. So you have sabers and cannons, which help you fight against the barbarians and the pirates respectively. You have gunpowder tokens, which can be used against either. And then you have a bunch of normal resources like rum, wood, and food, which you can use to build buildings. So you're going to collect all these, you're going to get yourself in a position to fight, maybe look at what enemies are coming towards you, because they all start face down and you kind of want to know how much strength you need to beat them. And then you're going to go to kind of a production phase with all the buildings you have. Your ships are going to let you trade. So they have a little trade on them that you can do. For example, this is trade a rum barrel to get a gunpowder and a coin. And your forts are going to provide you resources. Then, once you've done that, you'll have the opportunity in turn order to buy more buildings or host a rum party, which is just cold hard points. And when you build a fort or you build a ship, you get a ship or a fort on the board. So that's kind of how you get more on there. Then you're going to be able to take turns fighting all the face-up pirates, but you need a ship or a fort, pirates, barbarians, a ship or a fort adjacent to that face-up one to fight it. Then, once you've either beat all the face-up ones or nobody wants to fight them anymore, you'll go kind of top-down in terms of ships and pirates, barbarians, or forts, and you'll fight them one by one. And if you cannot, or other players cannot defeat them, then you're going to lose that ship, fort, and you're going to lose that card, which means you're losing victory points for the end game. Because in this game, you're getting points for the buildings and how many pirates you defeat. Now, what happens is whoever has defeated the least pirates immediately loses. They're out of the game. And they will essentially say how many pirates, barbarians they've defeated. And then everyone will subtract that many from their total. And then there's kind of an exponential scale of what's left. If you have 2, you might get 2 points. If you have 5, you might get 20 points after that. And then that and the building is going to contribute to who wins. And how you fight them is they have value of 8, and your cannons and your sabers and your gunpowder, and also the hero cards. If you don't use them for the power, you can use them for combat. They have values on them. And you can add all this up and you can say, okay, I have 9 strength. This pirate has 8 strength. I defeat them. I take it. That's basically how it works.
Every round they'll get stronger and stronger.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So what's great though is all of the cannons and sabers that you accumulate, you use them during every combat round and you flip them, but then when you go back to the kind of worker phase, you'll flip them back. So you're always accumulating, growing stronger and preparing yourself for the even stronger barbarians and pirates. And as we said in the intro, this is a semi-cooperative game, because what happens is if you, as a group, can't defeat them in the combat phase, they accumulate, right, down here. So you've got 3 spaces for each type, but if you end up overflowing and there isn't enough space down there for the ones that you can't defeat, then everyone just immediately kind of loses the game.
It's not like you then add up, it's like everyone's lost.
Yes.
Goodbye.
So as much as you want to be the one fighting the most barbarians and pirates, you do need to work together a little bit to ensure that that's not happening. Otherwise, nobody is going to win at all. So it could be a case of, hey, can someone put a fort here? I probably don't have enough strength to fight that barbarian next time. And that's when the kind of construction phase comes in as well, and like where you're placing them. And there's also some abilities to kind of swap forts and ships as well, so that you can work together a little bit. Though you can definitely screw people over. And I'm looking at you. You're telling people that you'll help them somewhere, and then you help them somewhere else, because then you get to like take another pirate.
Yeah, exactly.
He's the worst.
You want to get as many pirates as possible.
Yes. So just coming back to the way that the heroes work, like Farrell said, you have 4 every round, and you get to use them, and then they'll get shifted around, and each one has a unique power. Dennis, for example, lets you move or swap one of your ships into another space on here, because maybe there's one that's face up and you want to have the guarantee of being able to defeat it. But what's super interesting is, like you kind of mentioned, you have these hero cards, and when you're sending your workers out, some locations will allow you to gain more hero cards, and essentially they replicate all of the heroes and their powers. But it doesn't matter if you don't have that hero in front of you that round. All that matters is that they are on the board. So again, here's where a little bit of semi-cooperative, but also maybe some player griefing comes in. I think where the fact that you have to pay for your 3rd and 4th hero play every worker phase is very interesting, because money isn't really tight, but it's a little bit hard to manage sometimes.
Well, you have to work towards getting it somehow, right?
Exactly. So it is actually fairly unlikely that every player, every round, will play all 4 of their heroes. So there will be times where you really want to play a hero card, but the person that has them just doesn't put them on the board. I think most of the time, most people are playing about 3 heroes, because you just don't have enough money to play all of them. So that's super interesting, I think.
So I think that's basically how you play. You're trying to defeat as many pirates as possible. You're trying to build some buildings using the resources. But let's go to what we think. Think. I think it's fair to say that we were both pleasantly surprised by Chaos Cove. I know that I was a bit trepidatious about taking it based on the cover art, but I took it because it's Martin Wallace, and I mean, you don't turn down a game by the guy who did Brass Birmingham.
Absolutely not.
Or Brass Lancashire in your case. But actually, I think the cover is a bit disingenuous to the rest of it, because I really do enjoy the art and the character of the game, and I think it really shines through. Well, what do you think?
Yeah, so I absolutely loved it, I think, from even before we started playing, just because it has a touch of kind of humour running through it, and I think that's always pretty fun. So like the character names, I don't know, they're just humorous. I mean, there's a little frog called Dennis. an elephant called Nelly. So I just liked the kind of fun, vibrant vibe of it before we even started playing.
Yeah.
And then when we started playing, I just thought the whole concept of switching around your characters was really novel and fun. And yeah, I don't really have too much bad to say about this game. I think, like you said, maybe the cover's a bit deceptive. It's surprisingly has some
intricate.
It's intricate. There's depth to it, but we have been able to teach this to our kind of non-gamer friends, and it's probably a little bit of a higher barrier than you maybe led to believe. Again,
100%.
from the art and the cover,
100%.
Probably the one that they maybe struggled the most to get into out of the games that we've shown them so far. But I think we played a second game, right, and they got into it and had a lot of fun with it. So higher barrier to entry, but it's not impossible to show your kind of non-gamer friends. And for me, I think the whole theme and vibe and the fun of it will definitely suck people in.
I think something to just touch on the back of that is it is deceptive. I mean, there's nothing about it that's that complex, but it is intricate. I mean, you have a lot of different spaces that do a lot of different actions. You have kind of 6 or 7 different types of resources. You have all these characters that do different things, and on your turn you can do 3 or 4 different things before your turn's over, and you have to keep all that in mind. So there's a lot, and it looks very much like a friendly family game. And in a weird way it is and it isn't, because it's not something I would break out really with non-gamers at all. And it's also it's not a short, quick game either. It does go on for a while.
Yes, that's true.
It
has a big length of play.
Yeah, I would argue it actually probably overstays its welcome just a little bit. I think it would have maybe been tighter if there was 1 round less, because it does, because the round structure is kind of the same. You're just getting harder enemies. If you have 3 or 4, I don't think it would change that much.
That's true.
Besides the fact that you want to get all of the characters, heroes.
Exactly. I think maybe some of the intricacy, let's say, comes from you're going through the same round structure, but some of it is similar but different. I think the whole part where you do 2 combat phases, where one's offensive and one's defensive, throws people off a little bit, maybe.
Yeah.
Because it's can I fight anyone now? Am I doing it top down? Because it's kind of similar in a way, but different. So I think that's where it comes from. But I mean, if you're used to big, heavy, complex games, then don't see having any issues with this.
I definitely, I wouldn't say this is heavy, but it's a solid medium for sure.
Definitely.
So the worker placement is great fun. I like a lot of the tough choices you have to make in this game. If you want to use all 4 of your workers, you got to pay for it, right? I love that each one of them has a unique action, and on the whole, almost every action is pretty great. I think obviously with this many, you're always going to get some that are weaker than others. So I like the kind of angle that you also have these character cards, and that anyone can do the abilities of anyone as long as they're on the board. And I think there are a lot of fun elements in the semi-cooperativeness where you're basically trying to undercut the other players. In reality, if they don't get any pirates, it's better for you if you can steal them from under them. But at some point, you have to work together to make sure that you don't get kind of raided and overflowed, and then everyone loses. Yeah, I think that's quite interesting. But I think there's also just a really nice balance of things being equally interesting. You have all of these different action spaces, and they're all kind of equally interesting. You don't really see any being heavily favored over others, and they all have their own use of certain elements. Yeah. There's not any that are ignored, so I think that's quite good. And because the resources they provide is different at each one, you also have other incentives to go to these different places apart from just the action. Yeah. There's a lot of decision in which people you send out, at which time and in which order. I think there's just a lot of interesting stuff. And, you could go hard into the kind of pirates and barbarians and stacking those up and trying to be the player that has the most. Or you could quietly focus on getting resources and building a lot of buildings, hosting run parties for cold hard points, so you have decisions there. There's a lot of fun in where you put your forts and your ships and undercutting people and moving them around using the player powers.
Yeah.
So
if you like that kind of thing, I guess, which we do, where there is the opportunity to grief your opponents, then
it's been
you're
particularly fun.
Like this, and you'll find it fun. Maybe if you don't like that kind of thing, maybe it wouldn't be for you. Because there's definitely that element. It's not just a case of a kind of very straightforward worker placement where you place and do an action. And obviously there's always a little bit of grief of most worker placement where the space is blocked off, which is also the case here. It's maximum 2 characters or heroes per space. Yeah. But you've really got to lean into the kind of vibe of it being on an island and you're trying to protect it and you're trying to undercut people. So that's just something to bear in mind if that's not your vibe.
So I think that would take us nicely to probably our biggest issue with the game is that it's very different at 2 players compared to 4 players. At 2 players, it's almost like more co-op than it is competitive, except obviously only 1 player can win. And I know some people aren't going to like that because when you have 4 players playing, you're going to have more players putting more ships and forts out, which means more opportunities for more people to attack the pirates and the barbarians. You also are going to have more people putting more characters onto the board because in a 2-player game, you might only have 4 to 8, right, in a round because the other ones, they just kind of sit out. Yeah. Whereas in a 4-player game, you could have anywhere from 8 to all of them. Yeah. And so the cards become more useless in terms of being able to play them for the action or being able to play them for the combat value. Yeah. So you really do have to pull together. And it is quite difficult as a cooperative game at 2. And I think it's kind of stacked against you. So it is in some ways quite a different game, whereas at 4 players, it's almost just a normal competitive game and you don't really have to worry about, being overflowed and losing. But that is just something to be aware of. This huge difference because it's not a game that you can play at 4 and enjoy and then take it home to play with your partner and have the same experience. Yeah. And because there's basically no alterations really between 2 and 4 in terms of setting it up. And they've indicated that they're not going to change that either. Basically, this is more or less how it is apart from some graphic design. I mean, that's generally fine. It's fine. I really like everything and I'm glad that nothing's going to change. This is a prototype, by the way. But you can see everything looks really good. Yeah. I think there's just going to be some design tweaks in terms of artwork and assets and stuff. In general, we've had a really terrific time with this. It's been a very pleasant surprise. It's been really engaging. There's a lot of character to it. We've had a lot of laughs. And I think a core part of that is kind of the heroes and the world you inhabit. They're all very characterful. They all have excellent artwork. It's really easy to project onto them and make up your own metas, which we have done for almost every character. Yeah. And what really tickles me is that they have really normal names, but they're like a gorilla wearing a 3-piece or a little frogman, and it's just like Dennis and Ben. Something about that is utterly hilarious to me.
Graham the squirrel.
And it just the world itself is really fun to dive into, run parties and fighting off pirates. Do you have any final thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, I was pretty enamored with it from the first play, both gameplay-wise. I think for me, although the mechanisms themselves aren't particularly new, it is mostly worker placement. I feel like it's been able to reimagine those into something that for me feels quite fresh and unique. Yeah. Like the whole moving the characters around every round. I think that's really fun and fresh, and kind of fighting off the pirates in the way that you do, and the whole semi-cooperativeness of it. For me, it feels like something familiar, but they've managed to make it into something quite unique. So yeah, it's a big thumbs up from me. I think it's really, really fun.
Yeah, I mean, you said in our first game, I really like this about 7 times, right? So
yeah, I couldn't stop saying every new thing that we learn about it as we uncovered it in the first game. I was like, Really like this game.
Yeah.
Really like this game.
Yeah, I got tired of hearing it by the end of the game. So that was our preview of Chaos Cove. If you have any questions, please just ask us. We're happy to help. If this was helpful, please consider subscribing. And we're just really happy to help. So thanks for watching and see you next time. See ya.
Bye.